Okay, so we are the teachers of early years 3-4. I'm Miss Caroline.
I'm Miss Maris.
And before the year started, we were thinking what could we focus on this year and have like an overarching project. And we know that the children of this age are very
Interested in themselves.
Yes. And it's important for them to understand who they are and also how to represent themselves in many different ways. So we thought we would focus on that. That's why we named it the 100 Possibilities of Me in the World.
Yeah.
So we started with looking at famous self-portraits so that they understand what a self-portrait is. So we looked at self-portraits by Gauguin, Leonardo da Vinci, Picasso, different things. And the children were like looking at them, observing and commenting and try to understand a little bit what was a self-portrait.
So the children started off doing their own self-portraits. They used the mirrors and we just used pens so that they could just do a line drawing and we kept all the detail.
After that, we asked them, is there another way to make a self-portrait? And after some questioning and what kind of tools could we use, we went to the idea of making a selfie. So the children used the iPad and made a selfie of themselves. And we thought it would be very interesting to talk about pictures of yourself and images, because in our world, current world, images are everywhere. And we needed them to, we would like them to understand that you can have a representation of yourself which is a little bit different to who you are. You can transform yourself, but it doesn't, the representation of yourself, but it doesn't change who you are. So they edited digitally their self-portrait.
And then they edited with art using pens and crayons and anything else they could find in the classroom.
After that, we gave them some clay, and we printed their selfies, and they naturally made the self-portrait using clay. So some children used different techniques. Some to make the eyes, they just punched some holes and drew some lines using their nails. Some other children were taking pieces of clay, were making the eyes with little balls of clay, adding more substance.
We then moved on to making self-portraits with blocks. Some of the children used a hoop for the face, and then they used small parts to add the details. Other children used the blocks to do the outline of the face. Some children even added legs and arms.
When we arrived in November, we thought a great way to make self-portraits would be to use gingerbread dough. And as we thought it would be great to take part in the exhibition at the Old Museum, we thought, why wouldn't we do gingerbread self-portraits? And that's what we did. And we even got a prize at the Old Museum.
Yeah. When we came back in January, we realised that we haven't done anything using paint. So we asked the children to represent themselves using paint. Some of the children were still in the early stages where they just liked mixing the colours, and we lost the detail of what they painted. But other children, you've got the heads, and then some children have added the bodies as well with the arms and legs.
When you represent yourself, the face is important, but the rest of the body as well. And we thought, let's focus on the body in a different way. And we thought, let's go to the art studio, not the dance studio, and explore movement. So we put different music sound, and the children were moving different ways. But then we realized very quickly that they were fascinated by making statues. They were just making statues, looking at themselves and exploring and creating different poses.
So the children went into Centrum, and we looked at statues in Centrum. And then we came back to school. We realised how many statues there are in school around the art department. So we went on another statue hunt around the school. Then we talked to the children about how they could represent themselves in a 3D image rather than a 2D image. So we came into the block studio and we talked to the children about how they could represent themselves. They found it really hard to begin with because they couldn't move from the 2D to a 3D shape. But eventually they've managed to make models of themselves, and it was an upright model rather than a flat model on the floor.
They were making sure, some of them, they were making sure that the size of the statue was the same height as they are. And they struggled, for example, with balance, especially with the arms. So they found ingenious ways to make tiny arms or just pretend their arms were behind their back so you couldn't see them. And one little girl, so they all had a picture of themselves. And on her picture, she was wearing stripes. And she represented the stripes using different blocks on a statue. Afterwards, we wanted them to try something completely different, which was wire. And we let them explore what to do with wire. And during our second session, we put the wire again, but we had printed some pictures of wire statues. And naturally, they tried to make their own wire statues.
But they found it really hard with the wire. Their first comment when they saw the wire, this is going to be really hard. How are we going to do this? But eventually, one of the girls managed to make a wire image of herself,
Clara.
Which was Clara here.
No, here, behind you, sorry.
Sorry. Oh,
This one.
there. Sorry, Clara. And she showed the other children what she'd done, and they started to copy that.
But it was still very flat. And then we had the first child who made like a 3D part of the statue. The head is Hugo. And so every time a child was discovering something, another way to represent themselves, we were showing the other children, and that child could show and tell the other children how to do it. Later on, we asked parents to bring some recyclables, and the children made statues with recyclables and also with Legos.
Then we talked to the children about what they think is inside a statue. Some of them thought it was rock. Others thought they had a heart, and because it looked like a person, it had to have a heart, it had to have a brain. So we had a lot of discussion about what was actually in, and trying to change their ideas and for the children to share what they thought.
We started talking about what's inside the statues because when we were talking about the whole body, some children were mentioning the heart, the bones, so we could see, and that kept on coming back. So we thought, okay, let's focus on what is actually inside our body. So we asked the children's first initial representations about what's inside our body. So there's always a heart, there are bones, there's a brain. That was the first thing, and blood. There were discussions about where is the blood? Is there blood everywhere in your body? Is the blood going somewhere? So there were lots of discussion because some children already had a good idea of the blood circulation in the body, and some thought, oh no, the blood is only here, around their heart. And then someone said, oh, but there is in my head as well, or at least on my face, because my nose bleeds sometimes. So we had very interesting discussions, and we never gave any answers, and we didn't give any documents. We wanted to build up on these ideas of the children. After drawing, what's inside our bodies, we thought, okay, let's make a full-size body using the different elements that we can find in the classroom. So we had two groups who worked, and they outlined one of their friends, and then they chose blocks for the bones. Then all the red parts is the blood, and you can see there's blood everywhere. Then bones everywhere as well. They added a brain. Then food came in for the first time, and they said there's food. So we asked, where is the food? In the stomach. So there's food here. And eventually one mentioned muscles, so they added the muscles with the white cotton. The second group had the kind of the same thinking. The only difference with the second group was that they added water. In that group, they didn't think about water, and one of our students mentioned the water. And they used different materials to represent what's in their body.
After doing these models, we asked the children to go back and do their own drawings about what was inside their body, but this time using colour. So as you can see in the pictures, they've got a red heart, they've drawn the blood in red, they've got lots of colours for the food that's in their stomachs. They've started to think about what the brain looks like, where it is in your head.
So there was clearly, thanks to that activity that we did with the blocks, there was clearly a progress in their thinking of their representation and also what's inside their body, but still without any books or anything, any documentation from us.
Yeah.
We asked them, you have all different ideas about what's inside the body. How can we figure out what is inside our body?
And they were really stuck. They didn't know how to do that, so they talked about asking us. They talked about watching something on the screen, but we were trying to get them to think about books, and we could go to the library. So eventually we had a light bulb moment, and they thought that they could look in books. So we went to Mr. J and asked him, have we got any books on the body? The children picked their own books. They brought them back to the classroom. Then when middle schoolers came to visit us, they shared the books with them, and they shared them on a one-to-one, which was really good because the children could talk about the pictures that they saw. The middle schoolers could talk about what they know about the body. They could share their knowledge. And then we started to talk about the skeleton. So we had a model of the skeleton that the children put together using their knowledge that they had already and their knowledge from the books. And then we asked them to draw the skeleton themselves.
Miss, they also mentioned that we could ask a doctor. And then they realized we have a nurse here at school. So Miss Melanie came to visit us, and they had some questions for her. And they discussed lots of things, especially about the blood and the bruises, and why do you have to put like a plaster and things like that. That was really interesting. Yeah, and we saw that they were very fascinated with the organs and the bones. So we thought, okay, what about we let them be free and represent with their own colors and their own shapes the different organs of our bodies. And this is what they did in this gallery of bones and organs.
And as you can see, some of them have drawn their lungs, some have drawn the heart and the lungs, some have used lots of vivid colours, they've drawn the bones.
About that girl here, who made this amazing representation of the intestine, I did notice that she didn't come to paint. And I asked her, why don't you come to paint? And she was scared. She was scared to make a mistake. And I told her, in art, you can never make a mistake. And so with encouragement, she started. And it took her a long time because she was so focused on in a creative process. And when she was done, the result was amazing. So of course, everybody looked at it, we praised her, and she even inspired some other children to represent the intestine their own way. Yeah.
And then we talked about how we were going to finish the project and how we were going to bring everything that the children had learnt about themselves together. So the idea way we thought was to get them to draw themselves and then add all the details for the inside of the body. So originally they drew it with pencil and we went over with a black pen so they had an outline, and then they added the paint details. So as you can see, this Clara thought there was blood going all around the body, and you can see that she's got it going down the legs, the arms, all around her head. Some of them just added the heart, and then they've got bones here.
Lungs.
And lungs and the intestines, and they've got bones here for the knees and the hands. Some children have added lots of colour and they've got very colourful organs. Other children stuck to the pinks and the red colours.
This one even added the muscles on the bones, because we learned that a body cannot move without muscles which are attached to the bones. You can also see how much the younger children have progressed in their representation of themselves. For example, this is the first representation of Maxime. It's pretty deconstructed. You have different parts of the face, but they are, in different places, and there's no really outline of the face. And here, this is his last representation of himself, where you can clearly see what he needs in the face. He put his brain behind his eyes. He added the hair. There is a body. Here, he has his arms and his hands, and he's standing on legs and feet, which is really a big progress from the start of the year.
And for the end of the project, the children worked in pairs. So while they were doing their pictures, they were talking to each other, they were sharing ideas.
Yeah.
And it was...
We did put a younger one and an older one so they could learn from each other. That's it.